The grin that devours sanity. There exists a particular kind of dread that settles into your bones when you encounter true malevolence wearing the mask of joy. It's the contradiction that shatters our sense of safety, the clown who doesn't laugh, who never speaks, whose smile promises only agony. In the shadowed corridors where horror legends dwell, a new nightmare has emerged from the darkness, more vicious and unrelenting than anything we've witnessed in decades. This is the story of Art the Clowner, monochrome demon who has clawed his way from obscurity to become the most terrifying face in contemporary horror cinema. But how does a silent figure in grease paint become the stuff of our darkest dreams? What alchemical mixture of violence, silence, and sadistic glee transforms a character into a cultural phenomenon? Tonight, we descend into the abyss to trace the bloody evolution of horror's most savage new icona, journey that begins in the shadows and ends in screaming theaters across the world. Genesis of a monster. The early days of nightmare has an origin, and Art the Clown's genesis is as humble as it is unexpected. The year was 2008, and filmmaker Damien Leone was crafting something sinister in the underground horror scene. His short film, The Ninth Circle, introduced audiences to a hellscape they weren't prepared for, but Art wasn't the centerpiece. Not yet. He lurked in the periphery, a disturbing presence haunting a train station, his face painted in stark black and white, his intentions unknowable. This wasn't your childhood clown entertaining at birthday parties. This was something fundamentally wronger, perversion of innocence, a predator wearing the costume of joy. In those brief moments on screen, Art abducted a young woman, and though his appearance was fleeting, something about him lingered in the mind like a reflection. Leone recognized it immediately. This background character possessed a dark magnetism that demanded exploration. The director's instincts proved prophetic. By 2011, Art had graduated from background spectre to starring menace in his own short film, appropriately titled Terrifier. This was the crucible where the character we fear today was forged. The narrative followed a young woman who made the fatal mistake of witnessing Art's handiwork, becoming his obsession, his prey. Here, Leone established the fundamental elements of Art's terrifying persona: the relentless stalking, the disturbing juxtaposition of cheerfulness against acts of unspeakable brutality, and most importantly, that haunting, complete silence. His costume, the stark black and white face paint, the miniature hat perched at an absurd angle, that grotesque smile, frozen in perpetual mockery, all crystallized into an unforgettable image. Though the production was raw and the budget minimal, this short film left scars on the underground horror community. Word began to spread about this new kind of killer, one who operated by different, more nightmarish rules. Breaking through All Hallows Eve and Horror Leone understood that Art's potential extended far beyond short films. In 2013, he wove his various shorts into an anthology feature titled All Hallows Eve. The film employed a classic framing device: a babysitter and two children discovering a mysterious VHS tape on Halloween night. Its contents revealing Leone's shorts, including expanded, more brutal versions of Art's previous appearances. This marked Art's first feature-length showcase, but more significantly, it introduced a supernatural dimension that elevated him beyond mere slasher villain. In All Hallows Eve, Art demonstrates the ability to transcend the boundaries between fiction and reality. He doesn't just exist on the tape. He can manifest beyond it, reaching through the television screen to terrorize the viewers watching him. This meta-horror approach added psychological layers to the terror. Art wasn't constrained by the rules of normal space and time. He was something else, entirely a supernatural force that could breach the membrane between worlds, between the story and the audience. The film achieved cult status rapidly, sparking conversations in horror forums and underground film circles. The question rippled through the community: who or what is this clown? The mystique surrounding Art began to build, and with it, demand for more. The 2016 Unleashing Terror for Damien Leone heard the call from horror fans, starving for more of Art's particular brand of terror. Through crowdfunding, he secured the resources to create a dedicated feature film starring the silent killer. When Terrifier premiered in 2016, it didn't just meet expectations, shattered them with brutal, gleeful abandon. With a modest budget that preserved its gritty, grindhouse aesthetic, Terrifier stripped away pretense and complexity. There was no elaborate backstory, no sympathetic motivation, no redemption arc. This was pure, concentrated horror, one night of methodical, creative carnage. The film became instantly infamous for its practical effects work, and one particular scene that left audiences genuinely traumatized. A sequence so graphically disturbing, it became the franchise's calling card, whispered about in horrified tones. But the true revolution came with David Howard Thornton's performance as Art. Thornton brought a background in mime and physical comedy to the role, and this seemingly contradictory skill set proved to be exactly what the character needed. His Art moved with unsettling grace, communicated volumes through gesture and expression alone, and radiated a playful energy that made his atrocities even more disturbing. Imagine, if you will, a demon who has studied human joy and learned to mimic it perfectly, but without understanding, without true feeling, only as a tool for mockery and terror. Thornton's Art will pause mid-murder to try on a victim's glasses, admiring himself in a mirror. He'll pose with a severed head as if for a photograph, grinning that eternal grin. He transforms violence into performance art, his victims reduced to props in his silent, sadistic theater. This bizarre fusion of childlike playfulness and savage brutality creates cognitive dissonance in viewers. We don't know whether to laugh or scream. And that uncertainty is precisely where true horror lives. Terrifier spread through word of mouth like a virus, infecting the horror community with its uncompromising vision. Art the Clown was no longer an underground secret. He was ascending. The phenomenon, Terrifier 2 and cultural impact by 2022. Anticipation for a sequel had reached fever pitch. But even the most optimistic predictions couldn't forecast the absolute phenomenon that Terrifier 2 would become. With a significantly larger budget still raised through crowdfunding, maintaining that vital connection to the fan base, Leone expanded everything: the scope, the lore, the ambition. The film introduced Sienna Shaw, a final girl who feels less like a victim and more like a mythological warrior destined for cosmic battle against a demonic force. Leone also made explicit what All Hallows' Eve had hinted at. Art isn't simply a human serial killer. He's something far worse, an entity resurrected by malevolent supernatural forces. Perhaps a demon wearing human form. Perhaps something even more terrifying that we don't have adequate language to describe. Terrifier 2 was longer, bloodier, and more narratively ambitious than its predecessors. It transformed from a slasher film into something approaching a horror epic, a mythic struggle between good and absolute, grinning evil. The theatrical release became the stuff of legend. Reports flooded in from theaters worldwide. audience members fainting, vomiting, fleeing the auditorium. This wasn't marketing hyperbole or manufactured controversy. It was genuine physiological reaction to the film's visceral impact. The violence wasn't just graphic, it was relentless, crafted with such realistic practical effects that viewers' bodies reacted as if witnessing actual atrocity. The box office numbers told an incredible story. From a budget of approximately $250,000, Terrifier 2 grossed over $15 million, a financial success that sent shockwaves through the industry. It proved decisively that a massive, hungry audience exists for uncompromising, practically effects-driven horror that refuses to look away from the darkness. Art the Clown had completed his journey from underground curiosity to mainstream horror icon, standing shoulder to shoulder with Freddy, Jason, Michael, and the other legends of terror. Anatomy of Fear. Why Art the Clown works. What makes Art the Clown so uniquely, profoundly terrifying? The answer lies in a perfect convergence of elements, each amplifying the others into something greater than their sum. The weapon of silence in a genre populated by verbose villains, Freddy Krueger's sardonic quips, Chucky's profanity-laced rants, Pinhead's philosophical pronouncements, Sartre's complete muteness stands in stark, chilling contrast. His silence isn't merely the absence of speech. It's a void, a black hole where communication should exist. We cannot negotiate with him, cannot appeal to reason or mercy. There are no demands to meet, no motivation to understand, no twisted logic to decode. His silence forces us to project our own fears into that empty space. We search desperately for meaning in his expressions, his gestures, trying to predict his next move, trying to understand why. But there is no war. If there is, he'll never tell us. This unknowability is primal terror. We fear what we cannot comprehend, and Art is utterly, completely incomprehensible. The Theater of Cruelty. Jason Voorhees kills with mechanical efficiency. Michael Myers embodies pure, emotionless evil, but Art the Clown enjoys his work, and that enjoyment is what separates him from other slasher villains and elevates him into truly disturbing territory. Art transforms murder into performance art. Each kill a grotesque piece of theater with himself as director, performer, and only audience member who matters. He's playful, almost gleeful, approaching his victims with the energy of a child approaching a new toy. This enthusiastic cruelty creates profound psychological horror. We can rationalize a killing machine or pure evil, but a being who takes genuine joy in inflicting suffering, that touches something deeper and more disturbing in our psyche. He'll stop mid-attack to admire his reflection, to adjust his hat, to mime appreciation for his own handiwork. He treats human bodies like canvas and clay, creating tableaus of gore with artistic consideration. It's violence as entertainment not for us, but for him, and we're forced to watch his private show, to witness his pleasure in our pain. The physical virtuosity David Howard Thornton's performance cannot be overstated in Art's success. Physical acting at this level, conveying complex emotion, dark comedy, and pure menace without a single word, requires extraordinary skill and commitment. Thornton studied the great silent performers, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Marcel Marceau, but he corrupted their vocabulary of movement, transforming gestures of joy into expressions of sadism, turning comedy into horror. Every tilt of Art's head, every exaggerated reaction, every theatrical flourish communicates volumes. Thornton makes Art feel simultaneously human and utterly inhuman, recognizable enough to unsettle us. alien enough to terrify us. In a single gesture, he can shift from comical to threatening, from childish to demonic. This unpredictability keeps audiences perpetually off balance, never certain whether to laugh nervously or recoil in horror. The indie authenticity, perhaps most importantly, Art the Clown emerged from genuine passion rather than corporate calculation. Damien Leone didn't create art to fill a market need or launch a franchise. He created him because this vision demanded to exist. The films were funded by fans who believed in that vision, creating a direct connection between creator and audience that Hollywood productions rarely achieve. This independence allowed Leone to refuse compromise. There was no studio executive demanding the violence be toned down, no focus group testing to sand off the rough edges, no marketing department insisting on a sympathetic backstory. Terrifier and its sequels are pure, undiluted horror, made by people who love the genre for people who love the genre. That authenticity resonates powerfully with audiences tired of sanitized, committee-designed horror. The legacy continues from his humble origins as a background figure in a 2008 short film to a global phenomenon that leaves audiences physically ill in theaters. Art the Clown's evolution represents something significant in horror cinema. He's both throwback and innovation, channeling the gritty, uncompromising spirit of 1980s slashers, while adding modern sensibilities and a unique psychological edge that feels dangerous and fresh. Art represents a new era of horror, one unafraid to push boundaries, to trust its audience to handle genuine darkness, to prioritize practical effects and visceral impact over CGI safety. He's proved that independent horror can compete with and defeat studio productions when driven by authentic vision and audience connection. With Terrifier 3 promising to drench Christmas in blood, Art's reign of terror shows no signs of ending. He's carved his place in the pantheon of horror legends with that same methodical, creative brutality he brings to every kill. He stands among the icons, now silent, smiling, and utterly unstoppable. The clown who never speaks has said everything he needs to say. His message is written in blood and trauma, in fainting audiences and record-breaking box office numbers, in nightmares that linger long after the credits roll. Art the Clown has arrived, and horror will never be quite the same. In the darkness of the theater, in the silence between screams, he waits, still grinning, always grinning.